Parivartana yoga basically means mutual reception. Well, is basically what's called mutual reception in Western astrology. And basically it's when two planets occupy each other's signs. Now, there's an exchange of house lords that results, that links the two houses intimately. But there's an important point to consider here in relation to house systems, because if you're using Placidus houses, as most Western astrologers do, and particularly if people are born fairly in fairly extreme latitudes, and you have the houses that are very different sizes, you can have mutual reception between two planets, which will not necessarily mean that they are lords of each other's houses. Now, coming back to Rabindranath Tagore, right? You see, in the first house, we have the moon in Pisces. And then we have Jupiter in the fifth house in Cancer. It's the fifth house. So can you see the moon is in the sign of Jupiter, and Jupiter is in the sign of the moon. And so Jupiter is the first house lord in the fifth house, and the moon is fifth house lord in the first house. And the fifth house is, like with Western astrology, is very much associated with creative intelligence and all of this sort of thing. And so this is and the first and fifth and ninth are the Dharma houses, very auspicious houses. And it's almost like a Raja Yoga that really gets formed here. Also because it's linking the angular first house with the trinal or Dharma fifth house. So, a Parivartana yoga is not always necessarily a good thing. It can bring about very powerful good if it's linking good houses and good planets, to put it simplistically, right? But as we'll see in a moment, there's not always, the outcome isn't always that good. But in this case, this is something that specifically indicated the tremendous intelligence and creative gifts of Rabindranath Tagore. Now, Marie Antoinette, who famously told the poor starving masses to eat cake if they can't eat bread, which seems a very sort of blunt and rude, unnecessary, tactless thing to say, was born with Mars in Gemini, which is almost enough to do that, in the first house. And then Mercury in Scorpio in the sixth house of servants and enemies, incidentally. And so what you have is Mercury is Lord of the first in the sixth, and Mars is Lord of the sixth in the first. And so you have a exchange of the first and sixth. And this is, the kind of thing that could be taken as the promise of, your enemies laying hands upon you and injuring you gravely, and I believe she was, beheaded eventually. And so, this is the kind of thing that could indicate this. And I would also argue that even this Mercury-Mars mutual reception, first and sixth, it also arguably points to that part of her character that we get a glimpse of in that if you can't eat bread, eat cake statement. In other words, rude, cynical, hurtful, thoughtless words that can be harmful and cause lots of injury.